Alrighty, welcome everyone to, I think this is the third edition of the Open API Initiative Demand Generation Open Office Hours. We're here to just discuss Open API in general, try to figure out how we can, wouldn't say just create more demand, but get more people talking about what already is going on. There's already a lot of demand, there's a lot going on. There's just no real organized way of talking about it, broadcasting it, getting the word out. So on behalf of the Open API, after Postman joined, we wanted to spend some time just kind of digging through it, seeing what we could do, seeing what we could get going, and kind of making this a quasi-public group, even though it is kind of OAI led, trying to make sure that people know that you can just join. You can just be part of the conversation. You don't have to be an OAI member, and just make it a wider discussion. Everything we're doing here at GitHub OAI Demand Gen /home. This is kind of the home page. You can get to it, and most of the details should be here when we're having them. We're using GitHub issues for the communication thread, and then here's the event calendar that you can tune into, and then kind of starting to keep track of the other repositories that are evolving, and then I'm recording this and publishing a video of it each time so that people who can't make it can tune in. So last week we were going through some of the issues that had been submitted. Most of these are just ideas that people submitted to try to drive the discussion here, and we made it about halfway through there. So I'll recap the ones that we did, and then we left off here at a series of OAI forums. But let's recap a little bit. The first idea on the table was these open office hours. So this, in the kind of spirit of just moving things forward, I just kicked off these office hours, lit up this idea, and here we are running with it. So I'll pause there. Any other questions, comments, anything you'd like to interject before I kind of start rolling through these? Nope. Cool. And we're also, thanks to Emmanuel, we have this running notes here that we can use throughout an agenda, through some ideas here as far as what we can do metrics wise. Definitely want us to keep measuring what success of this group is, and as we're laying the foundation, we can get better at tracking this and having conversations about all of this. So you can join in here on the doc, you can join in here on GitHub if you'd like. Who else joined? Let me click back and see. Cool. We got Kevin. Cool. We got a few more joining. What's up, Kevin? How are you doing this fine day? All right.
Excellent. And ready to go.
Cool. On a Friday morning? Jeez, good job. All right, so let's roll through. Let's kind of recap what we talked about. We talked briefly about support for other groups joining the OAI, but also I think we came to agreement that this group, the Demand Gen group, is going to ultimately be more than just Open API. We want to, and I spelled async wrong, async API, but we want to make it so it's an umbrella for async API, JSON schema. Steve and I have talked about giving the API's JSON index format to the OAI. So this is kind of a hybrid conversation between these specs being part of the OAI, but really just making sure that we're talking about these other specs, because OpenAPI uses JSON schema, Async API uses JSON schema and OpenAPI. So there's a lot of overlap between what's going on. Another idea that was thrown out was doing a video interview series. This is definitely something that I want to take back to the OAI marketing group and see if we can get more resources to throw at something like that. So there's a handful of these ideas that are like that we're probably going to take back to the OAI marketing and have them get involved. But there's a lot of these ideas, and I'm really trying to figure out how we can set them in motion, like I did for the open office hours, and actually break them down into little chunks that this group can help tackle. We talked a little bit about more sponsorship of non-API tech events. There is the API Specifications Conference coming up, which is the official OAI event. If you want to get more involved in that, let Emmanuel and I know. We can get you plugged in. But this was talking about how do we get out of the echo chamber? How do we go to JavaScript, DevOps type conferences? And then I'm even proposing that we go to like real estate events and healthcare events, things that are even further out of the echo chamber, because some of these industries are being moved forward using Swagger and Open API. And I really want to keep that conversation going. 10 short PDF white papers on the value of Open API spec. Another idea that kind of overlaps with some things that are already in motion as part of the OAI. They have a separate working group doing a getting started guide and kind of official Open API learning materials, and this kind of fits into that. So I think we'll see if we can't take this in the marketing group and talk about it. A compliance stamp. There was talk about how do you certify that a tool or a service is Open API compliant. And I also threw in there, I would love to see as part of wider EDU efforts, which are also going on at the OAI, that we look at how can we certify developers and people being knowledgeable about Open API. So we'll keep that conversation going. I think it's an important one. Open source testing, parsing, etc. libraries. I'm going to merge this one with work that I've been already moving forward. So I should probably set this as in motion, around defining open source tooling and services that use Open API and get more formal, produce an actual catalog, talk about certification of these tools and services, and then I'm reaching out to each one to get them involved in the conversation. So if you want to jump in on these, I've started separate repos. You can go to OAI Demand Gen, and there's a service providers and a tools repo. This is where I'm actually have lists of the Swagger and Open API tools that exist, and then I'm actually tracking issues here as far as companies. We had a company called Readout that jumped in the conversation, kind of added their open source tooling. So I'm just starting to manage the work for open source tools here. And then I'm managing the tools for the work for service providers here, keeping them separate. One's commercial, one's open source. And then I started a third for people, because I really want to start showcasing the good stuff people are doing, and have a kind of a highlight section for people who consider themselves Open API practitioners. So I'll kind of clean up this issue and set that in motion. Kind of merge it with this idea of making sure that all the tooling is available. And then this is where we left off, is a series of Open API forums that are small virtual events. I think all events we're doing these days are virtual, but these are maybe just a regular, like quarterly, hey, here's 1 to 2 days that are dedicated to Open API. We can have discussions. So maybe similar to this meeting and the ones I have after this, where we just kind of talk about Open API, and then we can do some that are more structured curriculum content. And I would love to see this happen. It should probably be part of the OAI marketing. But as as Postman, I would love to see this happen and help kick off those events and weave it with the kind of the work that we're already doing. Excuse me. The next one, this was one of mine. I'm really into propaganda posters lately, like old school labor and World War I and stuff like that. I think the messaging is really interesting. But I was proposing that we have propaganda posters, maybe one for the Open API spec, but then maybe one for each individual stop along the life cycle, like one for docs, one for SDK code generation, and just kind of show the benefit and the value. But it's kind of a goofy idea. I'm not sure I'll be running with it, but I threw it in there. Here's Open API certification. So I would say this overlaps with the compliance stamp. This is, but I think this is more developer focused. and applying it to people. So this would probably be for tooling, and this would be for people. Member involvement, mandatory or encouraged. Either require that large company members contribute specialist time, marketing, or encourage it's rewarding them with recognition. Yeah, so this is one thing that I want to play with as part of this group, because so Emmanuel and I are doing the sponsorship for the API specification conference, which is really hard right now. It's really hard. I did it for 6-7 years for the Open API. What did we call it back then, Emmanuel? API Strat. That's right. And it's hard. Like getting people to cough up money is difficult. Getting people to cough up time and energy is really hard. And it's one of the things that I want to figure out about this demand gen group, and it's one of the reasons I set up a Twitter account, which I can dive into a little bit. But I want to try to figure out automated ways of measuring members and non-members who are tweeting things, who are helping kind of expand and talk about projects. I want to come up with a reward and kind of reciprocity system. And it doesn't have to be perfect or precise or totally punitive, but it should guilt people and encourage people to do things, because I helped push Swagger into the Open API Foundation in the early days, and I've seen it, watched it play out. I was a member as API evangelist for a while, and then now as postman, and it's hard to get people motivated. So I think I'm really looking for ideas to get creative. How do we do this? And one of the ways I want to do it is break these projects up into very bite-sized chunks and come up with things that people can do. One of them is this Twitter account that I created, what I call it, OAI Demand Gen. And this is not meant to be like public facing like the Open API account. This is purely anything I tweet here is for cataloging purposes, meaning JetBrains has something that's Open API. I want to follow up on this and get them involved. And so anything that's OAI related that I want cataloged, I want links, I want people who tweeted these out, I want them recorded, because I want to be able to process this in real time. And then I want people who follow it to be able to retweet some of these and help amplify and then measure that. And then I created a bunch of lists where you can start seeing, that's Kitten's list, that's not the OAI list. So if I view the OAI list, you can see there's lists of services and tools. As I'm processing them, I'm putting them into different lists, documentation. You can see I have 4 members in docs. I have README, Postman, Swagger, and Dexy right now. So this is my way of starting to identify tools, and then build lists that we can tune into what they're saying, and then harvest Open API related. Hey, look, there's Arlemy, and start amplifying and filtering out and kind of measuring. But ultimately, I want to come up with ways of measuring when people are doing things and when people are participating, make things modular, and try to get people involved and encourage people, and then reward them. And I think what I'm going to do is, if you're involved in some way, I'm going to come up with reward systems. And one of it is, I think I'm going to have companies, because I used to sell, this is how I used to make money, was this logo here. And then I have a slot, I think, where is it? Like, it's right in here, but I took it out, where I list those logos. And I'm thinking of putting like a leaderboard that represents this, like who's the most vocal, who's the most company that's helping out week by week. And then I'll float their logo up. This will be automated from a list, and just give tools and companies exposure on API Evangelist. But that's just one. I want to come up with many other ways to reward companies who are being vocal. So I'd like to explore this one a little bit more and flesh it out. Let me drink some tea. I'm talking too much. Community newsletter. This is something I think I can probably do pretty quickly on my own Steam. So I'm going to move it to kind of in motion, and probably just start it small. And I'm going to create a repo to manage this. And if people want to add things to the newsletter, they can suggest it either with a pull request or an issue. And then I'm going to to send it out each week and keep building that list, and use this as another one of those carrots that if you want, your tool or your service highlighted in here, then be vocal, be part of the community. You can suggest that it be added, but the way that I'm going to feature it and do things is going to be part of that reward system that we talked about. And I thought Ansible had an interesting, they have the Bullhorn newsletter here, which is run all here on GitHub, and you can find all the list of issues, and you can do so. I think I'm going to use this as a blueprint for how to run this newsletter. So I think this is one I'm going to go ahead and set in motion and take ownership of, because it's something that I know I can do. It's not going to take much time, and I don't need much resources to do it. So I like that one. OpenAPI is a recognized language on GitHub. Nice one, Emmanuel. Hadn't actually read this one. I saw it come through. Yeah, this would be huge. And I don't know if you guys saw the OpenAPI GitHub. Let's see if it just comes up. There, you'd think the story would be top of mind here. Introducing GitHubs. There we are. So this came out Monday. Pretty big deal. I reached out to Mark. He said they'd be interested in doing some storytelling, but they just got over the line, so they're not, just looking to kind of recover from the amount of work it took to get this out. But I think wider conversations about how GitHub plays a role in the OpenAPI ecosystem from them as a company, but I think also just making sure that the OpenAPI spec is kind of a first-class citizen there. One thing that has made API discovery for me, so I have a lot of bots that harvest API definitions from GitHub. It's like my number one way I discover APIs. And so I'm looking for Swagger, OpenAPI. I look for API Blueprint, and API Blueprint is actually one of the easiest to find because it has an extension on it. So I think beyond just OpenAPI, and from a syntax perspective, I think there's other ways that we can maximize the way that the spec leverages GitHub and is used on GitHub. So I don't have the time to move this one forward, but I'd love to contribute some and help flesh it out, and then see what we can do to actually move that forward. Create demand gen Twitter account. So I already took this and started running with it. So yeah, there's the Twitter account, and then Taylor asked what's the difference, and I kind of explained the difference between this and the primary account. Still working on that automation. I'm going to create a Postman collection that handles the automation around it and starts parsing links, parsing accounts, and trying to come up with that algorithm that is the kind of reward carrot and stick part of this. So we'll see how well that works out. Member churn prevention. So how do we check in with the OAI members? I think this is part of this. What I would like to do is, while this is an outside thing, I really want to be checking in with each of these members and going, hey, what are you doing with OpenAPI? Can we do something? Can we do a webinar? Can we do a story? Do you have a blog post? Do you have something in your docs? How do we amplify it? And regularly check in with them. And so I'm going to do this as part of this group, is reach out to everyone here. I'm already in some conversations with the MuleSoft folks, Open Travel folks, Stoplight. So there's a few Teach Labs, Tyke, that I've already talked to, but I want to understand, what do you need when it comes to demand generation? What do you want to see when it comes to amplifying what you're doing with OpenAPI as part of this effort? And then, hey, what can we get from you? How can we get more? Where's the reciprocity? How can we get you to step up more than just spending the money to be a member and actually help drive the conversation? How can you help amplify what other members are doing and kind of hold people accountable to a certain degree? So I think this is an important one, Emmanuel. I appreciate it. I would love to set it in motion here just by kind of building the list of contacts, reaching out to each member, and seeing what they want. And then here's one that I started doing. I've got several of these I got to get in here from. So right after this at 9 a.m. I do API 101, or excuse me, Open API 101, where I'm just going to have a regular 30-minute slot every Friday right after this to talk about the Open API. Any questions? I want to build some kind of standard curriculum or kind of content from that meeting. That's pretty much what I'm doing right now because haven't had too many people showing up. But I find that if I'm just consistently holding it, people will show up. But right now I'm just doing a lot of work to kind of build that content. And then at 9:30, I'm focusing exclusively on moving from the conversation from Swagger 2.0 to Open API, which I personally feel is one of the biggest illnesses that we suffer from the space. And so I'm actually finding creative ways of reaching out to people and asking them if they could stop talking about Swagger and move to Open API, and if they need help. And this was from Eclipse Che, which is IDE, and they're using Open API, and we're starting a conversation thread on the Eclipse Che site or GitHub repo. So I'm going to be doing more of this. I've been talking to like Target and a couple other big enterprise organizations who have gone all in on Swagger, but they just haven't made that switch to Open API. And what is that argument? I mean, I can make a superficial argument in saying, hey, you're just behind on the spec. Open API is more up to date, but we really need more meat. Components being modular and organized. I just need that whole list of arguments to make. And then this really overlaps, I would say, with the tooling and the service provider work is which service providers are still using Swagger 2.0. I'm going to work as I reach out to them and say, hey, why don't you make the migration? And then identifying the diff. I've done a diff between the Swagger 2.0 tools and the Open API 3 tools, and identifying which tools we need to push on to migrate and which we should just kind of let deprecate. But the goal is to kind of build that Open API 3 tooling catalog, really show companies that it's better to switch. The tooling's there. There's more tooling. It's more up to date, and then what the benefits of the spec are. And so that's my 9:30 or in an hour discussion that I'll be having with groups. Anybody who comes is just keeping that going. If no one shows, I just do work on trying to build stories and content and kind of build the case so that when people do show up, I have really good materials and I can do stuff on the blog. So yay, we made it through the list of issues. I would say I'm going to keep soliciting issues as part of this. But I am probably where I'm going to spend most of the time next is on the grabbing a few of these ideas that I talked about. The community newsletter I can move forward. I'm doing the office hours. I'm going to reach out to the other member groups and see what I can do as far as member churn. I'm going to be working on this Twitter account, and then I'm going to be fleshing out who the service providers and the open source tools are. So I'm going to be spending most of my time working here. But as part of this group, I'm going to try to figure out how to get other people to step up and own some of those other ideas. Oh, and I don't have this on the list. I should probably add it. So this is my attempt to kind of create a current taxonomy for how we talk about Open API, because I don't think this is part of the conversation. I'll add this as an issue. But who's using Open API? I think this is an important discussion. I actually pulled this from the Postman State of the API report. So this is the list of roles that we use, and then function. This is the list of functions that we use for the State of API reports. But then adding a handful of industries, and then I pulled all of this based upon the open source tools. And I think in the first session of this Open API demand gen, I talked a little bit about that. Is when I harvested all the Open API and Swagger open source tools from GitHub, I parsed their description and their name, looking for certain keywords, and these are those keywords. And I have them ordered by count, but here I just have them alphabetically. But these are all the things that people are saying they're swagger open API tools are doing. It's allowing for access, action, we're aggregating, all the way down. Some of these are more long tailish, but authorization, authentication, automation, change logs, chaining, these are all of the things associated with some of them are definitely more prominent. I mean, documentation is clearly a big one, discovery is a big one, and I'll probably kind of prioritize a handful of these and say these are kind of the top tier, and then this is what I'm going to be tagging tools and service providers as, is saying, hey, this is a discovery tool, or this is a discovery service. And so this is kind of work towards defining a vocabulary for how we describe what people are doing with the Open API spec. So this is probably where I'm going to be doing most of my work over the next couple of weeks, is focusing it on the tools and the service providers and just reaching out, because this is where Emmanuel and I are trying to reach out and get people to help step up and sponsor the Ask conference. But it's a multi-pronged approach. As I'm reaching out to groups, I'm having conversations with them, trying to understand what they need, asking them to get more involved, and just trying to have conversations about what they're doing, and then figure out new ways of partnering. And I'm doing this in a very public way. So if you look at, this is the Open API kind of, or API evangelist style kind of work branches. So here's my conversation with Fast API. If you're not familiar with Fast API, you go to GitHub. It is probably one of the top. So they've got 18,000 stars. It's a Python framework, but it's all built around Open API. So I've already emailed him. We've been going back and forth and talking. And so this story was basically kind of me documenting what Fast API is, and then making a proposal. I'm actually proposing how I can work with them as part of Postman. That's part of my carrot, but it's really leveraging the Open API spec at the core of it, and trying to figure out how we can deploy using Fast API as part of the Postman ecosystem. But also I'm ultimately trying to help them get more consistent about their docs, their testing, their having Postman collections, and being able to work with these APIs pretty quickly, and then discovery. So each of these open source tools that I talk to and work with, I'll be writing a story on, kind of fleshing out what they do, and then that helps give them a little attention, and gets the conversation out in the open, which not all people are comfortable with, but too bad. You got to be, if you're going to be part of the Open API and doing things, let's have a conversation out in the open that people can learn from. So it's some people really appreciate it. Some people it makes them a little nervous because they're just not used to it. So anyways, I'll pause there. We're about halfway through the hour, and just kind of, that's after getting through all those ideas, just kind of pause and let's talk a bit. What do you guys think? Everyone's been pretty quiet.
Well, I think that it sounds really interesting, and it's interesting to kind of understand what we can all do. There's quite a lot of stuff that you are going to do. So I already posted something into the certification part, which really interests me, and I have some ideas how to do maybe something else too, but kind of how should we go about it? Should we kind of have some people concentrated on specific ideas and try to flesh them out, since it's impossible for you to do all of that, probably. So
yeah, agreed, and I appreciate it. I mean, let me know your feedback. I mean, just trying to work through the issues, add comments. I mean, I know everyone's busy. I'm super busy too, so I only have so much bandwidth for this, and so I think trying to break things down into bite-sized chunks, and then owning. This is really going to come down to owning it. Like, once you can get something kind of broken down into small chunks, like how do you actually move it forward even just a little bit? I think that's going to be our challenge. And that's kind of what I want to do with this Twitter account. Is eventually I would love to have a list that's just like amplify, so it's ready to go tweets that people can amplify and get the word out about and do things with. So yeah, I appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts on which ones. If you guys want GitHub access, I'm happy to add you to this org so you can help break these up, add new ones, do whatever, help manage the labels. I'm gonna keep trying to figure out how to define. This is more than just in motion. How do we define the work that's going on? But I think breaking it down into small chunks is going to be pretty critical.
Question. Let's say that we have a few people that are interesting, like Jeremy's saying something about the certification stuff. So let's say that we have a few people interested in that, and then it definitely needs some decisions. I mean, obviously it needs discussion, and then it needs some decisions. So how is do you have any idea of how this would be organized in this particular case?
I mean, this is tough. This is part of the, what the right word is to describe it, that organizations feel like. I would say, OpenAPI is suffering from this kind of lack of decision making, or lack of, just stepping up and leading, because everyone's like, well, there's other people here. We're a member org. We have to be cautious. We have to be, and that's kind of why this is an outside group, is so that we can move things forward in a faster, more scrappier way. And that means things are going to fail, and some things aren't going to move forward. And I'm pretty happy about that. I've come to accept that. And for me, this is such a long journey. I'll have to actually do an assessment. I think last time I did it, when the OpenAPI went into the OAI, went into the Linux Foundation, I pulled up and did a kind of timeline of Swagger and how we got here. And I had written almost 250 blog posts on Swagger in different ways on the blogs from 2011 to 2015. And I pulled up all the conversations that I had organized at OpenAPI. I had got people there doing talks. We had done keynotes. We'd done workshops, work groups, and just all the little things that I had to do to move forward the Swagger conversation. And I'm not saying, trying to say that I was responsible for it. It's just I helped own it. I helped lead it, and then all these things, people started doing their own things. And so, how do we do that with this? I would say the certification, the compliance stamp, combined with certification for developers. How do you move this forward? I don't know. I mean, I can start brainstorming and figure it out, but we got to just map it out somehow.
Yeah, right. I think we have a few people who have some ideas about it by the looks of it. Kevin had already commented there, and Jeremy saying stuff, and me too. So I think that's one area where we could have a subgroup on that and kind of figure out how to proceed.
So how you manage the subgroup? I don't have any recommendations. I leave it open.
Yeah, I think that it just needs a few lines of discussion, and then it needs a meeting, and then it just needs, a way to handle that. So obviously, things like that. I mean, there's going to be materials, and they could go to GitHub and stuff or whatever, and then be commented separately. But it might need its own repo, for example. So.
Yeah, I was trying to find. Yeah, it's probably gonna need. I'm trying to keep things isolated into their own repos, and I'm such a mess sometimes. I have so many repos going on. I started something that I was trying to find last time. It's Stripe's OpenAPI. OpenAPI compliance. I had started some work on this because Abhijit from Postman asked me to, I gotta find it where it's at. He asked me to say, we wanted to be able to measure Postman's support of the spec. And so he asked me, well, what are all the moving parts? Like, what do people actually support? And so I came up with a list. What was that? Yeah, that's Stripes. So yeah, I'm gonna try to own the things that I know I can. Open API Toolbox. What is this? And I create so many ones. I don't know. Sometimes I gotta get better at my project management. But I can't own all of these. So try to get people to do them as separate repos. That's kind of why I moved some of these projects out. Is if you want access to this org, no, I don't want to take your survey. Create a repo and then use that as a central point, because then people can, if a project dies and doesn't get any energy, it just goes to the background. And that's looking at API Evangelist, my GitHub. You can see that is I'm so ADD. I have so many projects going on, but that's how I work, and I've been able to move some pretty big balls forward by doing that, because sometimes people step up and go, hey, what are you doing here? And we move it forward some more. And so if we could I would say move that out as a repo, link it to the issue and say this is in motion, so that we still have that reference here under the home issues. But then, similar to this Eclipse Che, I'm just linking out to where we're having that conversation. But let me know what you guys need. If any of these are interesting, I'm happy to do a quick first dive and provide some more meat. But I'm not really hip on owning too many of them.
Ken, are you or is someone involved here also involved with OAI's official marketing efforts? Like, I think, we certainly don't want to duplicate work or step on anybody else's toes. So in terms of removing roadblocks, I think that could be a big, perceived roadblock. And if that's not a roadblock, we should work on making sure that perception is out there.
Yeah, so this meeting is 8 a.m. till 9 a.m. I do the Open API 101 from 9 to 9:30, Swagger to Open API 9:30 to 10, and then 10:30 is the OAI marketing, and I go into that and I report everything that I'm doing into that. So we have a conduit. What would you suggest to help people get that? Should I add something to the README?
I think it's good that you're involved there. Is OAI's marketing efforts, are they as open as this? I mean, is this something that we could go through and say, what is OAI marketing doing today?
I could bring back, that's something I could bring back from the marketing meeting and publish it here. Because there's the getting started guide that's going on right now. There's an EDU effort. So I think maybe a digest from out of the marketing meeting, bring back to this and publish as part of this to show, hey, here's what the marketing group is doing. And then maybe a few of these ideas that are here that I mentioned, we need OAI, wider support, that if I bring those, I could then report on what's the status of support or interest from the OAI in doing this. So yeah,
it's like EDU effort and certification stuff that we're talking about here. There's probably some crossover.
Yes. Yeah. So for trying to figure out, I'll propose this in the marketing meeting today. Is how what's the best way of doing this? What would they like to see come be reported out of these meetings, and what do they feel comfortable with me reporting back down, and then just really defining that bridge and making sure it's observable and clear to both groups what's going on. Great,
thank you. And I see Emmanuel posted a doc to some meeting minutes or a set of notes from the marketing of OAI meeting. So thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, because you guys got to keep helping me understand, and I'm going to keep pushing on the OAI to help me understand is what's acceptable, what's the balance, because I'm purposely going to go faster, further, quicker, more, than the OAI is capable of, which means I'm going to get yelled at a couple times, but I'm pretty cool with that. That's how I roll. So any way that you guys can help me not get in trouble or be more responsible is always good. Let me think. I also need to work on better the events and how to get involved. I have this events calendar, which is a public events calendar. Well, now you're looking at my entire calendar. It's a public one. I'm gonna try to make it easier for people to get on these because I've had some people complaining. We did move it earlier in the day to accommodate international folks, so that sounded like that worked. I appreciate getting more diverse voices here. Yeah, and I started adding the repos, so I think if we get other repos here, I'll keep adding them here. And then the issues or the labels, I guess I should rename that, trying to how we're organizing things and kind of the how we're keeping things going. But for me, really I think the next one, I'm not going to do it this time, but I think the next one I'm going to just be diving into tooling because I really want to understand how much of this tooling is viable, meaning how centered it is around OpenAPI. And so what you saw I did with Fast API, I'm going to do with Redoc, and I'm going to go through all of these and leave GitHub issues for them, asking them, hey, what do you need? And so I'm going to probably just be doing that actively next time. And so it'll be a working session if people want to chime in. I want to have conversations like, hey, Manuel, what's the status of Dread? Do you know? Is it alive? That was a real question for you, man. Are you paying attention? It's all good. But anyways, I'm going to have questions like that. Like Dread is I know a very viable testing and solution. I want to understand its current state. And my goal is I want within a week or two, I want to have this, I think this is a top 250 list. I want to have it completely fleshed out. Like, is this a viable tool? Is it not? How does it use OpenAPI? And how doesn't it use it? And I want to have this kind of fleshed out. And then similarly for the service providers, I want to do the same. I'm really looking to come up with a fresh list of service providers because I've been working my way down this list, and quite a few of these companies have gone away. And I'm pretty, I keep track of them. Even if they've gone away, I keep screenshots and I keep kind of snapshots of who they were because the API space changes rapidly, and I like to remember the past. Like this, that went away. That's still up, but I know John and he's not doing anything. So really going through this list and vetting who's using OpenAPI. I'm going to go down this. And my goal is to turn each of these repos into the actual toolbox. So once I start vetting these, I will actually add a YAML list of those actual providers, and it'll become the source of the toolbox that I actually publish showing these service providers. And that's the services and the tooling is really where I want to focus, because I feel like that's the biggest illness in the space right now is I can't point to, hey, when it comes to a parser, what should you use? When it comes to docs, I can probably do that. I mean, Redoc is pretty top dog right now. So I can probably point you to those. I have a lot of research. But I really want to be able to do that for each stop along the API lifecycle and have a good toolbox. I did talk to Phil and Matt about OpenAPI tools, and I want to figure out how to just keep building and supporting their existing work, because this is super valuable work. I don't want to just recreate it, but also competition is good. And Phil acknowledges that Mike Ralphson has a list of tools, and then the OAIs kind of has a list they've been developing. But I want to build on this work. I want to complement and I want to cite it as part of our work. But I want to make a similar toolbox that'll be a page just like this, and it's driven by the YAML, and then it's broken down. So here's that taxonomy that I'm working on. So converters, data validators, but really trying to get a little bit more precise about the validation or the tagging, because I want to have platforms as well. Like I want to have languages and platforms. I want to be able to filter by Kotlin. I want to be able to filter by PHP. I want to be able to get a little bit more precise about what these offer. Is this server side? Is it client side? And it can be really tough to do some of that work. And I think that's where we're going to get some of the more modular tasks that if people can help flesh this out. I always like the name of this tool. I don't know why, but I do. But what actually does this service? What does this help? And it's Go language, and so I want to get more precise about that, because I think having an official Open API toolbox that is certified, this is where that certification comes in. I think that's going to be huge.
Kim, Jeremy is asking if that tooling repo is supposed to be open because we can't access it. Or it's that Open API tool, so it's like a site, but...
Yeah, well, it's this, it should be open. This one? Is it this repo?
Yeah.
It should be open.
One.
So I did notice, though, and I'm so oblivious sometimes, that when I create a new repo, private is the default setting, and these were all private to begin with. So it shouldn't be private anymore.
Yeah, I just want to note it's /tools, not /tooling.
Is that it? Maybe you got the wrong typo. Did I misspell it somewhere, and the link is bad on the readme?
I thought I saw that somewhere. Yeah, maybe even on the homepage.
Yeah, tool,
yeah.
Yeah, that tools works. The tooling, I just clicked on it.
That's it. So, yeah, it's just bad link. Me not spelling things right. All right, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, so we can add any others here and keep that. When a project goes into motion, we'll add a repo and use that as the working space. So, what do you guys think about people? I think each person I'm going to reach out to before I list them here, but some people are pretty public, and if I keep it just public info, like I'm not listing people's email addresses, what would be beneficial about this? I mean, I know people there's Arnaud, my buddy Arnaud. I mean, people like me who are very public, very knowledgeable on this. We want to be showcased. We're egomaniacs like that. But what else can we do? What kind of other people can we highlight in a respectful way to kind of showcase what people are doing? I would love for interesting ideas on this one, and I should add an issue so we can have that conversation. But
what about highlighting those people who are somehow participating in this actively? So you were planning to highlight the companies, but there might be individuals.
Yeah. And that's a good question. So, who are the people behind me? And do they want to be known that they're behind this? I mean, I would say some of the people do. I mean, I know some of these folks are, and they're very high profile, so they'd be fine. But yeah, I think that's a good question. Because, if I want to do something with API Fortress, who do I talk to? And it's Open API related. Who can I talk to? Can I just have a conversation with someone on Twitter? Can we build a directory? I think that's an important one. What is the ban protocol? Whoa. I've never seen that one. Interesting.
Blockchain is cool.
Blockchain is cool. Anything you do with blockchain and APIs is immediately cool. Huh, that's a new one. Interesting. It's IFS. Well, come on. Oh, they're a Magic Quadrant leader. That's good. Okay, what do they do? This is always a game I play with myself when I land on people's sites, is trying to understand what they do within 5 seconds. Okay, so here we are. Customer engagement, workforce management, aerospace. Okay. It's always a challenge. Understanding what it is people do. All right. So yeah, I think that's kind of what all I've got to run through today. I will spend some time today cleaning up the issues, consolidating, adding issues for the things I haven't here. take this to the OAI marketing meeting, I would say take a list that I think they should think about when it comes to these ideas, and see if we can't get more support there, because I know there's resources. What do you guys think about like hiring a project manager to help us manage some of the details and own? I'm wondering if there's a way we could establish co-ownership of some of these, so it's not like, like I'm doing, where hey, this just can move this forward, like get in line. Is like, how do we say, well, we got 2 or 3 people wanting to work on the compliance, and can we get resources to have a project manager to help us pay attention to the details, kind of like Neil is for the OAI. I wonder if we could do that. That might be a keeping notes.
I think that somebody who is able to ensure that we have kind of the connection open into the general OAI direction for example, that certification would be a good idea. Is that the project manager or somebody else? Then I don't know, but kind of someone.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Agreed. And be helping be that bridge, but help us be organized part of this, and then pull things back into the OAI might be helpful. I definitely want to spend some more time thinking about how we measure success here, because my approach is very busy and chaotic. Just do lots of things and kick up the dust, and people tend to participate or not. And that's how I move things forward. But I would love to get more deliberate about, what is success for the demand gen, like the number of members participating, how many repos do we have, and are these repos, active? Like, I would like to, now that I have these ones, like which ones are active, when was the last time it was updated, and maybe track that on a regular basis, so that we know, and maybe I can reflect that on the homepage, is, when I list these projects, these repos, I can then sort it each week before I jump on by how active they are, and because we want to pay attention to the active ones. But I think thinking about these metrics is going to be pretty important. Stars, watchers. Yeah, some of these are out of my control as far as OAI, but I can take back to the marketing group and go, hey, how can we track inbound links or activity? I would say that's my next challenge, is how do I track for this Twitter account, is how do I track success here? Number of interesting stories, number of followers, number of people retweeting these. I want to come up with a way that people know they can retweet this PHP storm that's open API focused, and then whoever retweeted this one, measure that as a metric. So I'm going to try to put some more time into, so probably just add an issue for all of these metrics so that I can start tracking them. Anywho, I would say that's pretty good for this Friday. Hopefully it's you guys still see some value in all this. I appreciate y'all showing up, and I'll just keep the conversation going, because this is what I do, is just keep talking until something happens, and we move one of these balls forward.
Thanks, Ken.
Appreciate y'all. Have a good weekend.